Hello, Canucks fans. I'm here with some bonus content. We have a Tiermaker list of the Canucks 2001-2022 roster, and I've categorized them into where they fit in terms of the organization's future. So I have the categories of franchise cornerstone, which will only be for a few of these guys, part of the core, possible part of the future, so remains to be seen. Not my choice to keep them on the team, and please trade them. Now, if we did this for last season, we would have a lot more people on the please trade them category, but this time around it could be a little bit different. I'm really impressed with this roster. It's not obviously a Stanley Cup contending roster yet, but the pieces are in place to be a solid team going forward. Now looking at this group, franchise cornerstones, those are fairly obvious. Quinn Hughes is one of them. Elias Patterson is one of them. Thatcher Demko is one of them. Those are, I believe, the three untouchables that we cannot trade, get rid of. We need to believe in them. Obviously, Thatcher Demko has emerged as a Vezina caliber goalie, and I think he will be a good goalie for us for years to come. We have him on a very, very good contract, so I'm happy to have him here. Quinn Hughes and Elias Patterson are both very young, but they've taken big steps in their game. Quinn Hughes last season didn't have the best season defensively, and he was working on that aspect of his game, and it has shown dividends already. He is looking a lot more confident in the defensive zone. He's made a lot of great plays defensively, and it's really improving his overall game. And Elias Patterson, we've had his struggles, discussed throughout the season. He didn't look like himself. There was some kind of injury or some kind of thing mentally where he wasn't 100%, and we all knew that. And I think the coaching staff and management and even the players like Patterson knew that this wasn't the normal Elias Patterson that we were used to. And I think that kind of comes with confidence. The Canucks were struggling for about a month or so, maybe more. And it was taking a toll on the players. You could tell they weren't having fun. You could tell that there was some kind of fraction within the group. People were saying it was player versus player, it was player versus coach, player versus management, whatever the case may be. Elias Patterson was not on his game. And slowly but surely, Elias Patterson has come into his own. He's starting to get his groove back. He's scoring goals. He's making plays. And it's a good sight to see as a fan of the Vancouver Canucks because he is a key part of this team. Now, in terms of the core players surrounding our franchise cornerstones, there's not a lot of them. There's people that you can maybe add to the mix. I don't know exactly if you would say that. I believe JT Miller is part of the core. He's a guy that we probably need going forward. There's a lot of discussion of him being traded. A lot of people are torn for many reasons. One, JT Miller, ever since arriving in Vancouver, has been a point-per-game player. He's been one of our best players over now the course of 3 seasons. He has emerged as a fan favorite. The fans love him. The players love him. He's a guy that wears his heart on his sleeve, and that's exactly what we need for this team. A guy that, keeps everyone accountable, and really leads by example. So JT Miller is one of those guys I think is part of the core. If they do in fact keep him, his contract is up after the end of next season, so we still have some time on figuring out whether he's staying or leaving. He hasn't demanded a trade or anything yet, so that could be some positive news. Brock Bezzer is also one of those guys I think should be part of the core. A lot of people have also said to trade Brock Bezzer, get something valuable. And the thing with, these possible trade scenarios is that, we can get a really good return for JT Miller and we can get a very good return for Brock Bezzer. But where does that leave us for this season and the future? Because draft picks and prospects don't always, end up being the best. We've seen that not only here in Vancouver, but any, organization across the league. There's no guarantee on prospects or draft picks that they're going to turn out to be all-star players. So I think what Patrick Allvin and Jim Rutherford and the rest of that management group need to figure out is whether they see JT Miller, Brock Bezzer even Bo Horvat, our captain, as key pieces of the puzzle, because we're getting there slowly, and if you tear it apart and you sacrifice what we have, that can change the outlook of this franchise, and that could be a good thing or a bad thing. And Bo Horvat, our captain, part of the core, of course, he's been with us for I don't know how many seasons now, 8 seasons, I think, and he has been a great leader on and off the ice. The fans love him. He is hopefully going to be the captain who helps bring a Stanley Cup back to Vancouver. And I'm looking at the rest of this group right here. I don't see any other guys who are part of the core. I'll kind of leave it as that. So Nils Höglander is a guy that is a very interesting person. You know, the fans love him. He seems to be enjoying himself here. You know, he really works well with the guys on the team, but he's not a top 6 forward. He's a guy that you can put anywhere in the lineup with anybody. He has good chemistry. He's a hard worker, but if you put him on any other team, he'd probably be a 3rd or 4th line player. And I don't know exactly what management thinks of Höglander yet. He can also be a guy that may be, traded for draft picks or another prospect. So I think the jury is still out on him. Vasily Podkolzin, it's too early to tell if he's part of the core. He looks like he will be a key part of this team going forward, but it's still kind of early to decide whether he's going to be a long-term fit. And anybody else? I'd love to say Luke Schenn is part of the future, just because I love how Luke Schenn plays. Ever since he's been drafted by the Leafs back in 2008, I've been a big fan of his. I was ecstatic when he came here back in 2019. I was even more ecstatic when he won a cup with Tampa Bay, and I was 1,000 times more ecstatic when he came back to the Canucks. I hope he's part of this team going forward. I know he's on a very cheap deal. He could be moved to any team, looking for that extra piece on defense. But I really hope that he does stick around, and the same with Tyler Mott. So I'll say, they're a possible part of the future. They can be key guys for this organization. Tyler Myers. You either love him or hate him. I think he's done a good job. I think, a lot of what bothers people about him is his size, how he takes penalties. That's just, the nature of the game. He's a physical guy. He's, not going to be, scoring goals or getting points all the time, but he is someone that has, a big contribution on the ice, especially in the defensive zone. You could put him in a shutdown role on the penalty kill, whatever you need, and he's a guy that will get, the most out of it. And Tany Pearson, he's a good complementary player, I will say that. He's a guy you can put up and down the lineup. Obviously, he has good chemistry with Bo Horvat. They're good friends on and off the ice, and he's been Horvat's line mate for most of the season and seasons prior. I don't know exactly where he fits in the Canucks' long-term vision. His contract isn't ideal. He's getting a little bit north of $3 million. He's a person that maybe a team might take a chance on if they're a piece or two away from contending for the Stanley Cup. He has experience with the Kings. He's played with the Penguins, and obviously Jim Rutherford traded him here. So there's always the awkward factor of whether Rutherford may trade him again. But he is a solid player. When he is scoring goals and making plays, he does a lot of the little things really well. I think he could be a part of the future if they decide to keep him. Same thing, Conor Garland, relatively new. He came over in the Oliver Ekman-Larsson trade, and I'm trying to find Ekman-Larsson. There he is. 2 guys that came over from Arizona. We traded a lot. We traded a lot of big, messy contracts, but also sacrificed a lot of our future in order to get these guys to help us contend. Garland and Ekman-Larsson have been solid additions to the lineup. Garland has really shown, that size is not a factor in hockey. He's a guy that's fast. He can skate. He can, hit. He's not afraid to do those things. And Oliver Ekman-Larsson, I think he's been a steady presence on our blue line. He's been a guy that has been put in different situations, power play, penalty kill, and he's made the most of it. It's his contract that bugs a lot of people. It's not ideal to be paying him more than $8 million or whatever he's getting paid. But if he can be, a solid presence on the blue line, in a top 4 defensive role, then I'll be happy with it. The stats don't exactly mean much to me. I think there's a lot that goes into hockey besides statistics. They don't always tell the whole picture. It's a lot of what you see that doesn't get represented in statistics that also makes a difference. Now, a lot of these guys right here, these are all like complementary pieces. Guillaume Brisebois. I don't know where he fits in, honestly, because we haven't seen much of him. He's usually a guy that gets caught up when we have a lot of injuries. It's a solid presence for Abbotsford. If I had a category for a part of Abbotsford future, I'd put him there, but I'll say possible part of the future. You never know. He might be a guy that, ends up being part of our, Stanley Cup winning roster if that happens. Yaroslav Halak, with all due respect, I think there's some teams that need you. I think we are looking good in terms of goaltending. Alex Chasen, I know we signed you because Brock Bezzer was injured. We didn't know how long he was going to be out for, but you kind of don't really do much. Jason Dickinson. I don't know how I feel about him. He hasn't really shown a lot. I know he's off to a slow start, but he has improved since Bruce Boudreau has come in as coach. We're seeing Dickinson being put in a lot of different situations, especially on the wing. He looks like he has a little bit more energy and a little bit more love for the game now, so that could have just been a coaching thing that might have been, hindering him a bit. He's not my choice, but he could be, a solid depth piece going forward. Tucker Pullman, I'm sorry, you get paid a little bit too much for my liking. That signing didn't really make a lot of sense to me. Justin Dowling, I haven't seen a lot of you. I'll just put you as not my choice. I haven't seen a lot to kind of give me much of a, discussion. Madison Bowie, solid depth piece. I know he plays a lot in Abbotsford. Kyle Burrows, solid depth piece. You're a local guy. You're kind of endearing yourself to the fan base, which is a good thing. Brad Hunt, same can be said for you. There's nothing against these guys. These are solid depth pieces, and they easily, can be an important part of our team when needed. It's just hard to say where they fit in terms of the roster going forward. We have a lot of we don't have a lot of prospects. We have prospects that, can maybe step in over the course of next season. We have Jet Wu. A lot of people have been waiting for him. He's kind of, had a slower start to his pro career. So hopefully, he's in next year. And honestly, he could take someone's place. I don't know if Burrows or Hunt will be back next season. I know they were kind of brought in as, depth pieces because last season we just didn't have the required depth to contend. Yuho Lamiko, similar to these guys, solid depth piece. He's been a really nice addition to our team. Matthew Highmore, he's an interesting guy. I'm really starting to like him. The way he plays. Obviously, that line with Tyler Mott and Yuho Lamiko has been amazing the last little while. I think Bruce Boudreau has a lot of trust in them, and that's a good thing. Whether he stays, but beyond this year or the next season, I'm not sure, where that fits in. If we can bring him back on a cheap contract, like a 1 year, I don't know, 850,000. I'd be happy with that. You know, he's a solid guy. You know, he's physical. He plays the game really well. And Mr. Travis Hamnick, I don't know. We haven't seen much of you. He's been injured. He's been, you know, I don't know what's been going on with him. That's not really, you know, my place to begin with. But for his contract, I will say, you know, he may be good for trade bait. But that's pretty much everybody. It's not a bad looking roster, to be honest. I think there's a few spots that we can probably use more depth in, or maybe a little bit more talent. But in terms of our forwards, top 9 looks good. We're seeing, you know, a lot of versatility in our forward group. Guys who can play up and down the lineup and play in different situations. Obviously, what would be our fourth line in Mott, Highmore, and Lamiko has kind of been put in different situations because of, you know, guys being put on COVID protocol, and they've done a solid job, honestly. And defensively, not as bad as we would have thought. I think, you know, the additions of Burrows, Brad Hunt, and Luke Shen especially have really helped, you know, kind of solidify that you know, bottom area of the defense. Goaltending, I mean, Thatcher Demko has been unreal. Yaroslav Halak, for, you know, the games he's played, he's done a good enough job. We also have Spencer Martin, Mikey DiPietro waiting in the wings, so we'll kind of see where that plays in. But overall, it's not a bad team. It's still, you know, a little bit behind what a playoff contending team would have. But given, you know, where we are in the cap situation and just, you know, overall, you know, prospect pool that we're struggling to compile, it's not bad. Let me know where you would kind of rank them. You can even search it up. You can just search up Canucks on Tiermaker, and you can probably find this one here. Send me what you think would be, you know, an appropriate categorization. And yeah, I had fun with this. We'll do this a bit more, but that's it.